can I calm down my dog when I come home or have people over? And again, I'm going to throw it to Ingrid to start.
You like doing that?
I do like doing that.
Okay, so I guess what I see when I see this question is there's actually two questions in there. So the first one is like, how do I calm down my dog when I come home, and how do I calm down my dog when I have people over? It's kind of similar, but it can be like I would probably approach them a little differently. So the first thing I want to check out, if someone comes to me with that, if they refer to me with that problem, is the first thing is there an underlying mental health issue? And what I mean by that is that dogs that go absolutely crazy when you come home after they've been home during the day.
Or you've just gone to the letterbox.
Oh, you've just gone to the letterbox, yeah, that's true. It may actually have a degree of separation anxiety or separation distress, we call it. Means they actually get really concerned, and then when you come back, they're just beside themselves because you're finally back. And like Zoe said, sometimes you just went to the letterbox or maybe to the next room, depending on the dog. So the only way to really tell is to have a camera up when you are not there to watch your dog. Obviously, if you're there, it's not happening. And B, if you don't have the camera, you can't really tell. You can't observe. So now you can get pet cams or just normal like cheap CCTV setups really cheap. Just go to one of your retailers, and a lot of them you can even watch your dog on the phone while you're not there, as long as you have wireless internet at home, and that will give you a bit of an idea. Okay, so if your dog just goes to sleep, or plays with the toys or have a chew and then go to sleep after you leave, and pretty much doesn't do much at all until you come back, then it's very unlikely that they're worried about you leaving, and they're probably quite happy and content and happy to wait for you. But then, if you see things that are pretty much most things that are different from that can be concerning. So it might be as subtle as like pacing, so the dog gets up every few minutes and paces back and forth, or just stands and stares at doors for a long time, and then obviously progresses to the more common signs that we get or that people are aware of, is like vocalizing, whining, barking, and down to really, really unhappy dogs or really distressed dogs may become destructive, and to a point where they injure themselves in the being destructive. Okay, so so we've set that up. If you notice any of that needs to be addressed before you can work on your dog being calm when you arrive home. And then, so we've sorted that. We're just worried about the dog being calm when you come home. It's I think for me what comes to mind is, with a lot of those questions in general, is like most of the time we are asked on how to stop something. So how do I stop this from happening? And my preferred answer is, what would you like to start happening? So what would you want your dog to do when you come home? And that's your starting point. So that's your starting point. Pick a behaviour. So we'll talk a little bit more, and that's from where you can progress from. With people coming over, the same applies, but you might involve a little bit more management, because it's quite hard to get people to participate in your behaviour modification or training, and there is a risk of them undoing all your hard work if you don't throw some management in as well. I'll just hand over to Zoe for that one.
That is very true, actually, because a lot of people come in and say that I don't mind that they're jumping, but in the end, we have to live with them, and it's not an ideal thing. Okay, so Unfortunately, when we get puppies, a lot of the time, sometimes it starts from then, that we, have to go out and then we come back and, we've missed our puppy. So we get all excited and kind of rough them up and, kind of tell them that when we come home, they should get really hyper aroused, which isn't the ideal thing to do. Ideally, we want to, come in, be really calm, ask them how their day was, even though they're not going to answer you. But then give them a chew, give them a licking mat, give them a calming activity so that you coming into the house or into the room isn't that key or that cue to become hyper aroused. So if we start it really early, that the expectation of us coming back isn't always that exciting, then that can definitely help set us up. We can later on, get them all excited. That's why we have dogs, is to enjoy them. So I'm definitely not saying you can't do that stuff, but it is a good idea to set that expectation early that you coming in is not a super exciting thing. And you might have a Labrador puppy and that's not going to be so much fun at 30 kilos when they're jumping at you when they're an adult. So we can often create frustration and mixed messages for our dogs. So we want to have that clear idea of what we want, like Ingrid said. So when I come home, I know my dogs are going to be excited, so I wouldn't expect them to sit at that particular time, as long as they're not jumping or lunging at me. If they're, jumping around and excited, standing, I'm happy for that. So our expectation of what we want is really important. We need to know what we expect of our dogs as well. And again, like Ingrid said, excuse me, management is really important. So you might have a baby gate set up or your puppy in a playpen. So again, they're not practicing those behaviours really early. Calming activities are really, really important. So calming activities are licking, chewing and sniffing. So I use a lot of those to keep arousal down. And it helps them stay in a learning zone where they can make better choices. We want to think about as Ingrid said, what we want the dog to do instead. We don't like the behaviour that they're doing, so let's, focus on what we do want. Do you want them to go onto a mat? Are you happy like me that my dogs are standing but not jumping? So it's important to know that. Knowing what we want will then help us get towards our goal. When we start working towards our goal, we're going to do it again in small steps, like anything to do with behaviour, so that the dog understands and that they can succeed. And this is one thing that I actually have trouble with one of my dogs. Tonka does get very, very excited when people come over. So I use a lot of management, lots of calming activities, and just set that expectation of what I want from him to do. And maybe it takes him 20 minutes to half an hour to settle down, so that first 30 minutes, can be quite challenging. And I definitely make sure my guests know what is expected of them so that that behaviour doesn't get reinforced. And again, work with a trainer. That's what we're here for, so that we can help, people get to their goal with things.